While American conservatives were raving about Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's address to Congress, not everybody in the media was as big a fan. Here is Chris Matthews, someone that this show has occasionally butted heads with, but he, not buying it. Let's watch.
I'll get to the heart of this speech now. This man from a foreign government walked into the United States legislative chamber and tried to take over U.S. foreign policy. He said, you should trust me, not your president, on this. I am the man you should trust. I am your true leader on this question of U.S. geopolitics. To protect yourself, you must listen to me and not to this president. It was a startling situation to allow someone to come in knowing that that was going to be their message in the chamber of the U.S. Congress. This was a decision made by and certainly complied with by Netanyahu and his ambassador Dermer. They went into the U.S. Congress to take over U.S. foreign policy today from the president. It's a remarkable day when the leaders of the opposition in Congress allowed this to happen. Think it through. What country in the world would let a foreign leader come in and attempt to wrest from the president control of U.S. foreign policy? And that's what the applause was about today. That was what the battle of applauses was about, to take power away from the president.
I don't think Chris Matthews has ever been more right. I think his analysis there was spot on, and I think that goes to the core of what was grating on me yesterday. So we broke that speech down in 1,000 different ways, explained all the things that were wrong in it, whether it was the lies, it was the political games he was playing in Israel and inside the U.S. But really, the heart of the matter is, how dare you? I mean, come into our Congress and tell us the president's wrong and we should defy the president and give like a State of the Union speech and have these, and how dare you, applies even more so to the Republicans.
Yeah, well, because he's invited. If he's invited by Boehner, he's going to come. Boehner's the man who invited him, so he's the one that we principally have to blame, I would assume.
To bring this guy in, to treat him like royalty, to give him over 50 standing ovations, I mean, it's a watershed moment. Netanyahu is overreached. And so it's obvious to the whole world who Washington works for, right? Because he hasn't overreached with Washington. I mean, it didn't work in changing our policy because President Obama is still the president and he's still continuing with negotiations. But in terms of winning over Washington, they love Netanyahu. Netanyahu could say anything and they'd give him 1,000 standing ovations. And it's ugly. It's not right for any other foreign leader. It doesn't matter how close we are. It doesn't matter if it's a Canadian Prime Minister or the British Prime Minister. It doesn't matter to come over here and say, your president is wrong. You shouldn't listen to him. You should listen to me. And especially on a critical matter of peace negotiations,
that are currently ongoing.
Whether we're going to go in that direction or we're going to go more in the direction of war. It reeks, man. It's really disconcerting. And I think for a lot of people, even if they're Republicans, I'm talking about voters, I'm not talking about Washington, which is so corrupt. I think that they got a little uncomfortable looking at that going, there's something about that doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly something that doesn't feel typical. I mean, when have we had a foreign leader come in and receive this sort of applause and this sort of like grandiosity? Like, look, if we have foreign leaders in and they give addresses, we should treat them with due respect, especially if they're an ally and a military ally of ours. But I've never, ever seen a foreign leader come and be treated the way that Netanyahu was. And it sort of weirds me out because Obama's been getting criticized by the right as not loving America, hating America, and all that. The Republican Party has been trying to pitch itself for all time as the party that actually loves America. And we've seen over just the last 12 months them basically being willing to say, you know, Netanyahu, if you want to stay, you can just take over the White House there. And that's coming off the back of the love that Putin has been getting. And who actually does not like our system of government? Because it seems like the Republican Party is not a huge fan of it at this point.
Right. And King Abdullah of Jordan, anyone who's authoritarian.
Yeah, that's a great example.
And in favor of war, they are absolutely enamored with. And there's one other aspect of it. Yes, other foreign leaders have come and spoken, and they've gotten anywhere from warm reception,
the Pope,
et cetera. But never has there been a case where they directly oppose the policy of the president at the time on a critical issue like this. It's as if the French, and other people have used this analogy because it's an apt one, the French leader comes in right as we're voting on the Iraq war, and he gives us, Democrats invite him in, and he gives a fiery speech saying, George W. Bush is wrong, you should not go to war with Iraq, and Democrats standing ovation after standing ovation.
No.
Heads would have exploded. And by the way, rightfully so. I don't need the French leader to tell me what to do here in America.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good an ally you are. That's not how it's supposed to work. And it's also not good for Israel. It feeds the beast that lurks in the shadows of, oh, they're running things. Mm-hmm. And so you think that...
Oh, you're saying for anti-Semites overseeing this.
You think the anti-Semites didn't look at that speech and go, you see that? We always told you who was in charge and who was running things. So it's, I mean, I grew up with a lot of Jewish friends. There's this saying, is it good for the Jews, right? I looked at that speech and I thought, that is not good for the Jews.
The one part of the speech that bothered me perhaps the most, because it was not just the most clear emotional manipulation and using what should be an extremely sensitive topic to win political points in the current day, but it was also so inexpertly delivered. So Netanyahu brought an actual Holocaust survivor to the speech and then pretended to have a private conversation with the man while giving the address. And he said, look, I can't promise to you that they will listen to me and they will support what we know needs to happen. I can only hope that they will. It was so phony.
It's like Dick Cheney getting up and giving that speech. And Netanyahu, and John Stewart played this clip too, was in favor of the Iraq War and said the Iraq War would create a wonderful situation where Iran would have less power. In this speech, he said, now Iran has more power and has taken over Iraq.
Because of the chaos in
But
Iraq.
you're the fucking knucklehead who told us to invade Iraq in the first place. So now you don't get to complain that Iran has taken over Iraq because of your dumbass policy and say, let's do it again, right? So Dick Cheney has no credibility in that, and Netanyahu has no credibility.